Hey everybody, this is Charlie from Charlie Cobra Reviews, and just wanted to say I hope you're having a wonderful day. This is going to be our review for Raya and the Last Dragon. If you liked the video, make sure to click that like button and subscribe to our channel for our latest reviews, and click on the notification button so you can be notified about our latest videos. Now to the review. Evil spirits called the Droon begin to ravage the prosperous land of Kumandra, turning everyone they touch into stone, even the legendary magical dragons. Eventually, the last of the dragons of Kumandra were able to use what was left of their magic to create an orb that not only warded off the Droon, but also restored everyone to life, except the dragons who remained stone. The people all wanted the power of the orb, which ultimately divided them into tribes based on their placement of a giant river resembling a dragon and the parts of the dragon: fang, heart, tail, spine, and talon. The Heart tribe who acquired the orb has guarded it ever since, and now 500 years later, Chief Benga of the Heart tribe has been training his daughter Raya to guard the orb. He still believes that all the nations will set aside their differences and become Kumandra again, despite their divisiveness, and invites all the nations over for a feast. This movie was really good. I really liked it. From the character design to the excellent voice actors and the setup of the story going into it in the beginning, it really had a lot going for it. This movie had a pretty good all-star cast of Asian voice actors, and I really liked Kelly Marie Tran and especially Awkwafina's performances. Awkwafina was really funny to me, and her voice fit naturally for her character Sisu. The character designs were interesting to me, and I liked the way they differed for the different tribes. I heard a lot of people were giving comparisons to Avatar, The Last Airbender, and I can see why people would say that, but for me there really isn't that much of a comparison. And in my opinion, Avatar is by far a way better show, but also has a lot more episodes to be a better show and tell a better story. I feel that this movie wasn't quite able to live up to the hype and the Disney standard in the long run, but that doesn't stop it from trying. I just think that a lot of it's predictable and nothing really that surprising. Also, as likable as the characters were, there wasn't a lot of character development outside of the main character, and nothing to really make you feel enough for the other characters to make them really matter to the viewer or the audience. The beginning, like I said, was a decent setup of the legend of how the people had the dragons protecting them from these evil spirits, and how the last dragons used their power to save everyone. That was a pretty cool concept, and I definitely liked the way it led into the introduction of the different tribal lands and tribes which exist in the present. You know, the training scene with Chief Benga and Raya reminded me of something from another movie. It was pretty cool. There was also some pretty fun and cool characters you meet later, like the charismatic young boy Boone, the hilarious little baby Noi, and let's not forget the adorable Tuk Tuk, Raya's best friend. There's a lot more that I want to go over, but I'll save it for the spoiler section because I don't want to ruin this movie for those who still want to see it. This movie doesn't quite get my must-see seal of approval, but it did come close. The main reason is that, having to pay a $29.99 price tag on top of your Disney Plus subscription required for most people to see it at home. And, I would say if you can see it without having to pay that price, then definitely it's worth checking out. Or if you're going to see it in theaters and taking the whole family, it's worth seeing too. But if you're short on cash, I'd say, wait for this one to be free on Disney Plus, which I hear should be around June 4th. And now the rating I give for this movie is going to be a 7 out of 10. It was really good, but not great, but I definitely enjoyed it. Alright, now we're going to get into the spoiler section, so I'll give you time to pause the video or to go ahead and come back and watch it at a later time. Okay, this is going to be the spoiler section review. I thought this movie was really good, but it definitely had a lot of flaws in my opinion. One of those wasn't the character designs or the animation, which looked awesome. Also, the voice actors were really good, and especially Awkwafina's performance, really surprised me, but was understandably one of the better performances, Kind of reminded me of such great comedians coming out in cartoons or movies like this, like Robin Williams as Genie in Aladdin and Eddie Murphy as Mushu in Mulan or Donkey in Shrek. I mentioned in the first part of the review that the opening story of the legend of how the dragon saved everyone was a really cool concept I thought worked well into introducing the different tribes and then the main characters. That opening scene of Raya breaking into the orb chamber and training with her father kind of reminded me of another scene from another movie. I'm not sure if it was a Pacific Rim Uprising where John Boyega's character Jake is stealing something from one of the giant robots, or maybe a scene from Indiana Jones, but it felt kind of familiar. Which brings me to another big thing that I didn't like about this movie, which is that most, if not all, the movie was pretty predictable for me, which doesn't necessarily make it a bad thing or a bad movie, but takes some of the fun out of it. One of the things that I didn't predict was how after making friends with Namari in the beginning of the movie, that she would totally backstab Raya the way she did. That was such a gripping, intense moment where Chief Benga had to come to Raya's rescue as the Fang tribe moves in to steal the orb. I really liked the part where you can see in the reflection of his sword that Raya was ready to continue fighting alongside him against all the enemies, even when the other tribes came to steal the orb for themselves as well. The character designs and animation were really awesome too. I liked Raya's costume and how she transitioned from what she wore as a child to the time skip, and as well as different attire that the different tribes had. I like how they were all quite unique and different besides just their clothes too, like how Raya's tribe was the heart, and they wore green and blue, which kind of reflected their connection to the water dragon, but also how their home was the most full of life with plants and water. I liked how the Fang looked more like a city, kind of a capital city. It had a militaristic feel to it. It seemed like they were all about law and order and rule. And it was pretty cool that the way they all had those big cats that they rode on as well. The spine was a more colder region, and it looked like it reflected that with the hardier people that were bigger and also how they wore multiple layer clothing for warmth. And the tail, which was, we only got to see a little bit of it because it's the first one we're shown in the beginning, seems like it was wiped out by the Droon. And it looked like it was a desert region that was full of little pocket villages, which it kind of shows whenever Raya takes out her map and circles the last place she's looking, and it showed that she had already circled and checked a couple of other places. The last one, Talon, was probably one of the most colorful ones, and smart in how they dealt with the Droon as well. They built their houses on stilts right on the water and had a huge marketplace where it seemed like a festival or party was going on because there were so many people going on as if there wasn't any danger. Another thing I liked about the movie was how Raya didn't have any powers and she wasn't a princess that needed to be rescued. Instead, she seemed like a strong, capable person on her own. I also liked how it seemed the more the movie went on and as she went on her journey that she kept adding people to her crew. Kind of like Luffy from One Piece, or the movies like Magnificent Seven, or Seven Samurai. One thing I didn't like was that it never really felt like there were enough stakes along the way. Characters kept making mistakes, but nothing bad really happened or mattered for long enough to impact the characters in a bad way. One of the parts that got me the most was in the very beginning scene where the tribes try to steal the orb and it falls and breaks, and Chief Benga gets shot by an arrow in the leg and tries his hardest to save Raya from the Droon as they come back and start devouring everyone, turning them to stone. I heard a lot of people say that he didn't need to sacrifice himself and throw Raya into the river to save her. If he just kept running, he probably could have, hopped on his other leg and, he would have made it. But if you think about it, he probably made it pretty far already for having that injury, since the place where they kept the orb was up on the mountain and they were already down by the bridge. I admit that part got me a little emotional, but for many people that knew it was a Disney movie and not Pixar, they figured it didn't mean everyone would stay as stone. But I kept thinking back to the beginning of the movie and remembering how the story with the dragons and how the dragons stayed as stone and they never came back. So maybe it was possible that these people might never turn back to normal as well. The other part that got me was also a part I had a hard time with, which was, whenever Namari first sees Sisu, and then her actions later as she tells her mother. I felt that Sisu should have told her something or vice versa. It felt like there was, a part there that the movie missed out on, but I guess she kind of just stayed in shock. Also, when she told her mother and the mother already knew, I really felt like her mother was the bad guy of the film, but when Raya gives Namari her pendant back and sets up a meeting with her, I really felt I knew what would happen next. Namari's mother, Verana, would have a bunch of guards show up and it would be a setup, and Namari would have known about it and feel really bad for, tricking Raya like that without knowing what her mother was going to do. And it would be a great time for her character to redeem herself. But instead, Namari pulls out a crossbow when she sees Raya has all the pieces of the orb, and while Sisu tries to talk her down, Raya takes a chance to attack Namari, and Sisu gets struck with an arrow and falls into the river to die. I could totally see this happening, but what I couldn't predict was that Namari would blame it all on Raya and say that it was all her fault and none of this would happen if it wasn't for her. This was like the stupidest line in the movie for me and made no sense whatsoever because Namari was the one, way back when she was a girl, who backstabbed Raya and betrayed her as soon as she found out the location of the orb after making friends with her. So the scene where Raya is super pissed and trying to kill her was very gratifying to me because it made a lot of sense that Raya was so mad and didn't care about anything but revenge in that part, not even her life. Namari tells her that she's lost everything already and doesn't care, and Raya decides to help her friends with her orb. As the orbs start losing power, they're becoming surrounded by the Droon. What doesn't make sense to me is how Raya chooses to put her faith in Namari and lets herself become consumed by the Droon. Her friends decide to follow her example and do the same, and eventually when Namari's the only one left, she's able to put the pieces of the orb back together, vanquishing the Droon, and bringing everyone back to life, including Sisu and all the other dragons. I don't know, but to me it just seemed like Namari was pretty irredeemable after all that she had done, and didn't seem like it was a sure thing, and this kind of bothered me. It seemed like the movie had a message about wanting to be able to trust people, but showed more and more how sometimes you really can't. So it had me pretty mixed up about what the whole movie was actually about. Anyways, I think I went off a little too long for this review, but it's because it was a fun watch for me. So like I said, I give this movie a 7 out of 10 and say it's a really good movie. Alright, thanks for taking time out of your busy day and checking out this review. Remember to like the video and subscribe to our channel to keep up to date on our latest videos, and hit that notification button if you don't want to miss any. Also make sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you like watching video games, check out our live streams on Twitch where we're streaming pretty much every day, and our other channel here on YouTube where we post the streams at a later time. I'm Charlie Cobra, and have a great day.